Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 10, Episode 84. He's Dave Bryan, I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being here this Friday, Steelers Nation. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. Happy Friday. We need a stick so we can poke the Steelers and make sure they're still alive and moving. It's been, boy, the transaction wire, all of it kind of, since really, I think like the first week. You realize it's been like since like the 9th or the 11th. I forget exactly the date. January was the last really transaction move that they had, and I think that was the Battle kid, the safety, being signed. And that was just like a day after Johnson, the wide receiver, the former Buffalo, Buffalo product was signed. But since then, man, it's been quiet on the Steelers front, especially when where the news wire comes into play.
It has. It is March 6th, and I have run out of things to write about. But once we get this wave of news, it's going to be nonstop. So get ready, Dave, because once this news starts to come in, it's not going to stop for like a month.
Yeah, and unfortunately, though, because of the way this CBA negotiations is going on, and kind of knowing what the Steelers are having to sit back and wait to see what route to go, we might be in for another full week of inactivity here.
Right, and let's start with that and kind of lead off the show talking about the CBA. The vote has gone to the players. I think the deadline is March 12th for all the players to come in and vote. Again, a simple majority will ratify the CBA and make that new proposal happen, really effective immediately, but we don't know which way the players are going to vote. A lot of veterans on Twitter have vocally come out against it, but we know some of the smaller name guys, the guys not making much money, might have an incentive to agree to this deal for their own benefit to boost their own minimum base salary. So we don't know which ways this thing's going to go. And yeah, Pittsburgh, and it feels like the rest of the league, the Patriots with Tom Brady, for example, are all kind of in a wait and see mode to see which way this thing goes.
Yeah, especially the Steelers, because a lot of probably or quite a few of their decisions, related to right here at the start of the new league year, revolve around this, and the biggest part of, as we mentioned several times, is a 30% rule. That makes it very tough right now for the Steelers to free up cap space via restructures. Very tough if they got any players, say like Cameron Hayward, who they're hopefully wanting to try to get extended prior to the start of the new league year to free up some cap money. That 30% rule really is a big obstacle right now for the Steelers, and that's really, there's part of me, I don't know how you come down on this, Alex. Part of me obviously hopes this plays in the favor of the 2020 Steelers to be able to get the things done that at least I think that they're wanting to try to get done. But another part of me thinks, I think I think the players should really call the bluff here and see if they might be able to get the owners back to the negotiating table one last final time, even if it means pushing back, the start of the new league year by a week or two. It can be done. Obviously, a lot of this stuff needs to be wrapped up sooner rather than later, because they're not going to move the draft or anything like that. But I mean, you've got a little bit of a leeway between the start of the new league year where it sits right now, which is March 18th, and obviously the draft a full month after that takes place there. I don't think the players have done a good enough job yet to get maybe some more things that they deserve. And another thing that crossed my mind is what's the percentage of players eligible to vote will wind up voting, do you think?
That's a good question. I would hope that most of them would have an interest in this stuff, but you're right. I suppose not 100% of the players will vote. I mean, I would love it to be 90%, but who knows? And I think the other question is, and I think both of us kind of posted at the same time in the DM last night, for those smaller name players not making much money, bottom of the roster type of guys, will they do the thing in their best immediate self-interest, as in voting yes for the CBA? increasing their minimum salaries immediately, or will they kind of follow the lead of the veteran guys like Richard Sherman, for example, like Aaron Rodgers, for example, who have come out against the CBA proposal, and will they follow their leader? So which way will those guys go? That will determine really if the CBA gets approved or not.
And how many of them, even the, whatever percentage winds up voting really understands what they're voting on?
Sure, not many. I mean, not a ton. And I understand that because it's so complicated, it's such a mess. I mean, that's not what they signed up for.
Right, and I'm sure they're getting fact sheets, and I'm sure the propaganda on both sides is flowing through email accounts and whatnot. And the other thing that crossed my mind is 2011 was the last time they had to go through this, and social media obviously wasn't new at the time, but now. I mean, now everybody and their brother has either an Instagram account or a Twitter account, and it's really a lot more prevalent today. And that way, propaganda can or opinions can be quickly shared and that kind of stuff. And while I think to some degree social media probably played a role in swaying votes, the last time. I mean, that's a long time ago by the way technology and all has advanced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Twitter barely existed the last time there was a CBA. And Instagram, was that even around back then? So yeah, social media is going to have a giant influence. Again, I don't know which way this thing's going to go. If it does not get passed by the players for Pittsburgh, they're in a really difficult spot. I think we touched on it briefly on Tuesday's show. Assuming that they are going to tag Bud Dupree, which is a given, I think, at this point, and the reports keep coming out that this team is intending on keeping Vance McDonald, I don't know how you do that financially unless a CBA gets passed.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, even if you maximize the restructure process underneath the 30% rule, as I wrote in a post, several weeks ago, that only frees up, about $10 million or so. I forget what the exact number was. Not a lot.
And that's if you do literally everyone.
Yeah,
possible.
I mean that's getting the guys that you can get the 700,000 out. The very low numbers out of. Obviously, in both scenarios, I mean you go from Ben being the high side at roughly I forget what the number was, around 3 million. Yeah, to 3 million to almost 10. Roughly 10 million. If you're not dealing with the 30% rule. So unless they've got some other creative ways that unbeknownst to me, it's going to be tough. I mean, and that of course assumes that you're still going to try to restricted tender your guys like Filer and Hilton and Zach Banner, right?
Those are musts.
That might not seem like a lot after roster displacement takes place when you hand out those tenders, but they are increases, especially what the tender amounts are set to be and all on top of that. So, if you're a Steelers fan and you want the Steelers to be able to do everything that we think they should or could do, you're definitely probably hoping that this CBA proposal gets passed here in this in this next week.
Sure, from a Steelers fan standpoint, that would be ideal. But obviously, my focus is always on the players getting a good deal. I know you're in the same camp, and I think they can get more in this CBA. I don't think the owners are offering enough to have them do a 17th game. I don't think the players are being compensated enough personally. But we'll see which way they go. We'll find out again March 12th, and that is the same day the deadline for the franchise tag, correct?
Right, and the funny thing about that is there's I think like a 4-hour gap there. So the vote will be finalized around 11:59 in the morning Eastern time on the 12th, and then I think the current franchise tag deadline is 4 p.m. Eastern time there. So our team's really going to wait and whittle it down to the final 4 hours. I suppose it's most definitely possible there because and here's the thing too, currently still the teams, I think the agreement is that as of right now teams can still use both the franchise and a transition tag under the agreement that if a new CBA is reached, in the meantime, that they would have to rescind one of those.
Right. So you could have a situation where, like, I think Dallas, for example.
Right, and I really think they're probably they're only one with that could come into play with that, at least from what I read out there. Obviously, the Steelers are in no position to use, heck, maybe not even one tag unless things change here. But obviously not two. But then you'd have to wonder, okay, if the CBA agreement is reached. Or is it reached? Regardless of the outcome of this vote this next week, could we still see the start of the new league year maybe pushed back another week?
Are there any rumors about that? Because I have just honestly have not seen any reporting that actually could be in play.
No, there's only the speculation that it's possible to get something like to push it back.
Okay.
Not that there's a likelihood that it would, at least not from what I'm reading. But look, I mean, obviously the owners aren't going to tip their hand that we're willing to do this, because they want it to look like there's a hard deadline right now in the sand. Now, should we get to 11:59 on the 12th and this thing not pass, are they all going to get together and say, okay, let's push this back another week? This is our final proposal, and then let's see what happens there. So, anytime you got negotiations, so important such as this, I'm sure deadlines can be played with.
No, I'm sure. Yeah, I would just be interested to see how the owner and NFL side reacts if the players shoot the CBA down. Are they going to be back at the table trying to work out a deal, or are they going to just say, okay, we're going to take our ball and go home for a little while? I don't know what the reaction is going to be.
I don't either. And you would think that the owners, obviously, because trying to negotiate new TV deals and yada, yada, it obviously would be a lot easier with the CBA in hand, and they're not going to be liking not having that future money, already plans in. Even though I don't think anybody at this point, regardless, or at least from what I see, are concerned about a potential work stoppage in 2021.
That would be my point, is that the owners did this before. They went to a lockout, so I think they're okay with waiting for a situation when they're not even close to a lockout right now.
Right, but the players might be saying, look, we know you have a lot more to give. We know you really don't want to lock out, like last time. Let's get something done now. So, I mean, we're just speculating here, and we're on the outside of the outside. So, all we can do. And look, if anybody wants a good kind of cliff notes about what this latest proposal includes and what side is given what, Andrew Brandt on, I think it was Sports Illustrated, had an article.
Very good article.
Very good article that goes through kind of that, and is very, very informative if you like reading that kind of stuff. I think I tweeted it out yesterday, so you should be able to find it in my Twitter timeline, and obviously you should be able to find it in Andrew Brandt's timeline or the Sports Illustrated timeline as well too. It should be easy to find.
And my last thought on this is just from a Steelers standpoint, it's clear Ramon Foster is coming out in favor of this deal. I don't think he's explicitly said so, but everything he said is positive, so I assume he's one of the 17 or so reps that voted to advance it to the players, and it seems like he likes this deal, whereas Marquise Pouncey has continued to hammer this deal, even trying to raise money with his brother to create a fund for players if there's a lockout, which I think is kind of silly, really not effective, but very much against it. So it's interesting to see those competing guys literally lining up to next to each other with very different feelings on the CBA.
Yeah, you got you got a lot of stars, Richard Sherman and Watt and Rodgers and a lot of high profile Russell Wilson, a lot of high profile guys have come out and spoke against this. And obviously, I don't think I listened to a little bit of Eric Winston on Mike on Golick and Wingo show this morning there, and he didn't sound too terribly happy that Marquise Pouncey kind of let known kind of the size of the war chest that's out there with what players might could expect should this thing ultimately get to a lockout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the players have been smart this time around because they have saved up much more money this time as opposed to the reason why the lockout ended last time was because players were out of money. There were players that were just flat broke saying, we need to get a deal done because we need to get paid. We don't have any sort of savings there. So they withheld money this time around. Their Madden checks that have been withheld to kind of give them some more flexibility to go longer term with this thing. So I think if you're a player, you can sit there and say, we have options. We have some time. So I don't think they have to feel compelled to do a deal right now. This is not 2011, whenever that was. So we'll see how they vote. I don't know, but I still think there's a decent chance it does not get passed.
Yeah, most definitely. Look, I don't know what side this thing's going to come out because a lot of things I said, social media having an impact nowadays. Obviously, most of the league is comprised of younger players now, and they're going to, a lot of them are going to see, we're going to get $100,000 more, increase as bottom of the barrel players here right out of the chute here, kind of thing. I don't know how that will sway some of them. There's probably a very small fraction of players who think that, man, if we don't vote this thing in, we're not playing this year.
Sure.
Just from not being educated on enough. I mean, look, it's hard enough for me. They're going to come out with a new CBA, and I'm finally making it my way through understanding a good portion of the old CBA. There, so it's obviously not something a player sits down and reads and comprehends one time through. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think in this new CBA, there'll be a lot of changes with the compensatory formula should this thing get passed. I was reading the thread by Nick Corte from Over the Camp, who's probably the leading expert on all things comp related, and there's going to be several changes in that too. So have fun with the comp formula, which we just figured out like yesterday. All of a sudden, it's going to change again.
And also with the as Andrew Brandt pointed out, the cap spending floor. Previously teams over I think it was a 4-year span had to spend spending 89% of the cap number in cash. And I think the new proposal is like what, 90%. So
it goes up 1%.
barely. I mean, they ought to be pushing for. Look, we want 98% of what the cap is to be spent on players.
Or, at least like 95. Get this thing up. Put more money in the players' pocket. So that is. I think the players can get more from a revenue sharing standpoint too. I think it's unfair. It's too heavily on the owner's side. But as you said, a lot of these players bought on the roster just trying to make some money, seeing their salaries are going to increase by $100K. If they pass the CBA, that is very compelling for those guys.
Right, and really less so for the high dollar guys.
Oh, sure, and that's why Aaron Rodgers doesn't care about it. Yeah, right. But we'll see. We'll see.
We'll know, or at least we think we'll know by Wednesday. Wednesday at 11:59.
All right, Dave. Let's get off the CBA and turn back to the draft. You had your second mock draft go up the other day on Steelers Depot. You can take us through it. I think it was a really good mock draft, though. I think you're 2 for 2 this year so far.
Yeah, obviously this one wasn't. I wanted to try to mix this one up a little bit because what fun is it if you put the same guys in every mock draft here. And that's part of the reason why it changed up a little bit. And look, I've learned a little bit more about a lot more players since the combine took place there as well too. So all right, here we go. In with the Steelers' first pick that they have in this draft, which is obviously 49th overall in the second round, I have center Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan. I don't know where you have him ranked in centers, interior linemen, guys that could probably potentially play center and guard. Here, I've seen various people have him at the top. I've seen him third or fourth on the list as well too. I looked at what he's done. I looked at his ability to play a little bit of guard too. I think he played some right guard at Michigan. In the last 2 years, I think started at center for him. If the Steelers lose, and it's very possible jettison Ramon Foster and B.J. Finney not be able to be retained during free agency, there's going to be a gaping hole. That they're going to need to fill. Now, will they potentially go out and sign a bottom of the barrel free agent that can play some center and guard? I think there's a good potential of that happening, and we'll probably go over a few names on your list here.
I have some options for you, Dave. If you want to go dumpster diving with me.
All right, but even regardless, we would expect the Steelers to do that anyway. Fill potential holes with low end, cheap players, and then still potentially address the position in the draft. Drafting Cesar Ruiz, should he slide to the second round there, at the Steelers pick. Look, I could have just have easily put Wisconsin's Tyler Baez in the same spot. I think both are kind of interchangeable. I don't think Tyler Baez has as much experience at the guard position, but I think he's made it known that he thinks he can do it. And would be open to doing it should that happen. So, kind of look at this as a Ruiz or Tyler Baez kind of selection there. Because that might be best available, and it's not sexy, but it would kind of fit a need or potentially fit a need there.
Mm-hmm. It does, and I could even throw Cushenberry in there for my mock. I think I had him in the third round of my last mock. It might be a little bit too low, probably second round a little more realistic, but yeah, I think it fits. And certainly the idea that they couldn't draft a center if they go out there and sign somebody low level, I mean, they definitely could and should and likely will, I think, do both. I mean, you look at last year, I mean, their biggest free agent signings were Steven Nelson, a corner, Mark Barron, off-ball linebacker, Dante Moncrief for receiver. What were the first two positions they drafted last year? Inside linebacker, wide receiver, and cornerback. So they really tend to double down when they do free agency and certainly can still draft those positions. And I think Ruiz makes sense. I do view him as the number one center interior guy on the board. So I wonder if the number one interior guy will still be on the board at 49. But as you said, you kind of use this as just a catch-all for an interior lineman.
Right. Do you have Tyler Baez as maybe number two?
I think him and Cushenberry are going to fight for that spot. I don't know exactly where I'd go. I mean, I think it'd go either direction on that one. Maybe if Cushenberry can't work out, his pro days, get that hamstring injury stuff at the combine, that may shift things enough. But my only concern, I guess, would be that I know that over the last 5 years or so, Steelers' first and second round picks have been picks that have gotten on the field right away to some degree. And obviously you're one injury away, if you draft a Ruiz and someone goes down, he's going to be next man up. But I generally think that these first and second round picks are guys that have a quicker, clearer path to play time. That being my only maybe disagreement.
Sure. And that's definitely understandable. But no first round pick this year, and they're more apt to maybe not find a day one guy in the second round,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. Your third round here, or do you have a final thought?
I was just going to say, look, I mean, put three players in that jar right there, Cushenberry, Baez, and Ruiz. I think that could, as you kind of described it, kind of be a catch-all, at least when it comes to this mock. Now, in my heart of hearts, do I think it will be an offensive lineman there at 49? No, but also I'm not going to say that it's not going to be, Sure. I think it's a viable option, obviously depending on how the first 48 picks go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's possible. So third round, you got a kid, son of a football player, right?
Yeah, got a little bloodline in here. Antone, how do you pronounce it?
I say Antoine Winfield.
Antoine Winfield. Obviously, his dad, Antoine Winfield Sr., played 14 years in the NFL as a cornerback. Boy, you can start drawing the short line between the 2 points here. Winfield, of course, played in Minnesota Vikings for a number of years, and he was there in 2006 when Mike Tomlin was the defensive coordinator.
Good point.
So there's you got to know that Tomlin has probably known Winfield Jr. out of Minnesota for quite some time. Now he's a little undersized at 5'9" and 1/8. So I think that's one of those, him being a little bit undersized, him being a safety, and safeties kind of generally, if you're not top one or two, they kind of get pushed down a little bit in past drafts. I think he could potentially still be on the board even by the time the third round compensatory pick rolls on there. This is a guy a player that has some versatility in him. He played in the slot. He played in the box. He played some free safety for him. He played in a lot of cover two type situations for them. As well too, he can play. He's got a little, he's got some tackling. I believe a little bit of tackling issues that he needs to clean up there overall. But a very, very smart player. fairly productive overall during his time at Minnesota. Obviously, the bloodline there. He could probably potentially get in on the field in some sort of maybe dime capacity. Half point of his rookie season and on. Probably be an instant special teams asset on top of that. So, and we've talked how many times. What are the Steelers going? What's behind Terrell Edmonds and Minka Fitzpatrick right now at safety? And the answer right now is really not a lot. And you obviously would like a guy to be as maybe versatile as possible, to maybe potentially play some free safety in a pinch, and I think he is that guy.
Yeah, I love this pick. The bloodlines make sense, and also, by the way, Ruiz and Winfield Jr. Those are both underclassmen, correct? They're juniors.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so that makes sense from kind of how the Steelers were. I went very old, very seniory with my mock draft, so I think this is more realistic in that regard. Yeah, the versatility, and he tested well too. He ran, what, a 4.48. I don't know what his other numbers were, but did he do the broad and the vert, and do you have numbers on that?
I know. I go straight for the Spark scores.
Right. I assume he tested well.
Yeah. From I'll have to look real quick and see what he did, what he did and didn't do. Let's see here. 126.2 Spark score. So that's very good for a safety type. And what all did he do? Looked like he did most everything, Alex. Except I don't think he bench pressed.
Okay.
Oh no, he didn't do the shuttle or the three cones. So that's kind of, I think.
What were his broad and vert?
Looks like his vert was 36, broad 10.33.
Okay, and with a 4.48, I think that kind of fits overall what the team's looking for with athleticism. Yeah, I don't know quite how the fit would be in terms of him playing right away, but a third round pick, it doesn't mean he has to play right away, especially late third round pick. But certainly the depth. I mean, again, there's no safety depth right now. One injury is all it's going to take, really, yet anywhere, corner or safety, to get someone like Winfield on the field.
Right. I mean, once again, these top two picks probably from a outsider looking at this mock, not sexy at all.
No, but I think they do make a lot of sense. My favorite pick, though, of your whole mock is with your next one, though, with wide receiver Devin Duvernay from Texas. I think that's the best pick you have, and I think you're falling in love with this kid.
Boy, I finally got around to him. The bad thing about what we do is, especially the way we kind of cover the Steelers, he gets such a later start than most on this, and boy, with this deep wide receiver class as it is, it takes some time to get to do proper deep dives. Now, 3 weeks ago, did I know who this kid was? Yeah. Did I really know who this kid was? No. I mean, obviously I watched a little bit of tape, but boy, once you start diving into deep dive into his tape, deep dive into his story, into his kind of character, what we know that's out there, boy, how can you not like this kid, right?
And he's fast, and he can play in the slot, and you can have that combination of guys with game-breaking speed that can also win in the middle of the field. So I think I do have some questions just about, like, what more does he offer than just kind of that speed. I think he is a little stiffer of an athlete than I would expect, but yeah, high character, high production, at least this past year, senior year at Texas. You can play on the inside and maybe create some splash plays. So I think this one makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, over 100 receptions last year. He made a huge jump from like 30-something receptions to 100-something receptions. And that what they did is he had previously played predominantly outside. And then once Little, what's his name? Who was the Texas receiver from last year? Little
Jordan Humphrey.
Yeah, little Jordan Humphrey. Once he moved on, they moved Devin Duvernay from the outside inside to the slot almost predominantly. And, boy, that made a huge difference. And this guy, you look at him, 5'10" and a half, 200 pounds. You just look at him physically on tape. He's got one of those running back wide receiver bodies. Really kind of resembles James Washington. And I know some people probably wrinkling up their nose when they hear that, kind of, at least from a physical standpoint. But he's, kind of got that running back body playing wide receiver. And now, look, he doesn't, to me, play speed, at least from his 2019 tape. You don't see that 4.4, what did he run? 4.4.
I think he ran a 4.39
or 4.39. Yeah, that's right. It was originally 4.40, and then the official, or at least NFL Network official, came in at 4.39. You see that maybe him breaking away from people in the open field. I don't think you necessarily see that in his route running. Now, I will preface, and I did a deep dive, and I highly suggest people go look at the contextualization that I put up on him on Thursday on 55, I think, total targets. He had 47 receptions, and then you go back and you look at his total numbers from 2019. Now, he was used quite a bit in the screen game. Okay, as part of those wide receiver screens, those RPO stuff, the tunnel screen kind of stuff like that. And in fact, a loose percentage, you could say about maybe 33%. 30 to 33% of all catches that he had last year were balls that were probably caught behind the line of scrimmage. Okay, now he did have very good yards after the catch when it comes to that screen game. And, as you start getting into his tape, you wonder, okay, and you start seeing all these screens, is there more to him than just this screen game? And there is. Once again, he played predominantly in the slot. He did a lot of work. Had quite a few catches. I think a really total of about another 33% of all of his catches were in the middle of the field. And obviously, middle of the field in college, there are wider hash marks. So you're really talking about getting a good visualization of where he caught a lot of his passes down the field, in the middle of the field, past the 5-yard area, running a lot of the mesh concept, a lot of the zone kind of settles, the quick slants, those kind of things. And even when you get past that, you say, okay, is there even more to this kid? How does he do down the field? And boy, you want to talk about a kid that can run that slot fade, can run the post, the deep post, can run the corner route down in the red zone. He did it, and he did it quite effectively too, because once again, he had 85.5% catch rate on 120, I want to say 129 total targets there. Boy, just go back and look at the highlights from his final 3 games alone and the catches that he made down the field. In fact, his last catch of his college career was in the bowl game against who they play, Utah. In that corner route, and it was he was interfered with on a corner route in the end zone, contested catch. What a way to go out there! And you see more instances of that in his game down the field, down the sideline. Once again, go turn on his final 3 games even of last season, and you'll get a good sense of who Duvernay is. Now, is he ultra tall? No. 5'10.5". No. But he is a they even handed the ball off to him, used him very little as a running back, and I think he used him on kick returns as well too. Now, I'm in love with him to the fact of where I think he might get drafted. Mm-hmm. Obviously, because once again, this is a very deep wide receiver class. And because of that, I think teams are going to get some good finds in the 3rd and 4th round. And I think Duvernay is that kind of guy that could potentially fall out of those top 3 rounds and maybe make it to the Steelers' first of 2 4th-round picks that they have. They're going to like this kid. Top to bottom. There are a lot of good articles about him on the internet from this past season as well too. So I personally, he was a Senior Bowl participant. So you go back and you look kind of the stuff that was posted during Senior Bowl week. It seems like he had an impressive week. So I'll let you take over and say what you know about him from just the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I thought it was an okay week. I mean, some of his tape I did watch. I just did some cursory tape before the Senior Bowl, and I wasn't super impressed, but I just think the overall profile is that mesh between the guys like me that are screaming to get slot help, middle of the field type help, with the guys that are screaming get more speed, get some more guys that can win vertically and take the top off the defense. So I think Duvernay is a really good blend of that. As you said, they're going to love him for his character. Steelers are always about hearts and smarts. So I think he's going to fit that well. I think the 4th round is a really good evaluation. I had him. I almost put Duvernay in my mock draft. I had him like my others considered. It kind of came down to him versus Van Jefferson. I don't know how closely you've watched Jefferson. I mean, do you think Duvernay is a better prospect than Jefferson? And do you think he's more likely to be on Pittsburgh's radar than Van Jefferson?
I think both of them are going to be on the radar. Obviously, with Jefferson's kind of recent I mean, it's not a huge concern injury wise. Now they're both obviously battle tested, and coming out of the colleges that they played for, those kind of things. Duvernay has somewhat of a bloodline, I guess, in either cousin or nephew or whatever of Murray. And I think he's got
Kyler Murray, yeah,
right, and he's got a twin brother. I think that's kind of where the bloodline maybe stops. As far as those two, Jefferson obviously a lot different kind of build to him, But you want to talk about a durable guy? I like Duvernay's contested catch ability. A little bit more than Jefferson's. They're both not really accomplished route runners in my view.
Oh, I think Jefferson's a great route runner.
I would probably put Jefferson as maybe the better, but I'm not saying he's extremely well rounded, at least from the contextualization that I did on him. I think they're going to like both of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you draw up non-first or second round, I'll just say non-first round wide receivers, potentially, being drafted from second to fourth round. I think both those guys are going to be in there. Jefferson, Duvernay, Mims, Mims probably has worked himself ahead of pick 49 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
As has the other Jefferson out of LSU, who was my first pick in the last mock draft there. But man, I mean, how many receivers are going to go? I mean, there's only so many that are probably going to go. And once again, this is a deep wide receiver class. So, I've got recent bias working against me right now because Duvernay is the last guy. Heck, I mean, I just went through 55 of his targets. Mm-hmm. So I tend to like Duvernay a little bit more than Van Jefferson right now.
I think one other factor should be considered is that I believe Duvernay is a year younger than Jefferson. Jefferson's going to turn 24. It looks like Duvernay's 22, probably going on 23 right now, so that may make a difference as well.
Who'd you like better? Did you like Jefferson better of the two at the Senior Bowl?
Oh, yeah, I did. Jefferson was maybe the best or the second best receiver right up there with Denzel Mims. I think Duvernay had a relatively quiet week, and I do like Jefferson better as a prospect. What I will say is that I think Duvernay's faster. I think if Jefferson was healthy to run a 40, Duvernay is going to be the faster player straight line. And also the fact that Jefferson is unlikely to be able to work out at all. You won't have his testing. That not going to take him off the board, obviously, but you're always going to wonder what exactly – does he test and does he run? And trying to put that in the profile, and that's an obstacle to overcome. So that'll hurt Jefferson a little bit, I think.
Yeah, but once again, I think Jefferson and Duvernay are two guys in that third to fourth round area that the Steelers are most definitely going to like.
Absolutely. All right, other fourth round pick, Dave, you're finally filling the tight end position.
Yeah, I did it because I knew I'd get tomatoes thrown at me if I didn't.
And I would be holding the tomatoes.
Yeah, and a lot of pushback of where I have this kid being taken. I get it, I guess. Look, I'm not enthralled with this tight end class. I think. Well, I mean, we'll see what ultimately happens, how far pushed down some of these tight ends go. Personally, if you're a Steelers fan, I think you're hoping for 2 or 3 tight ends to go off the board before the Steelers' 49th pick. Overall there, because look, I'm just not enamored in this. And look, Cole Kmet, I think from an athletic standpoint, an athletic profile standpoint, is probably the best of this class. However, you've got a 1-year production guy, you've got an underclassman, and you got a kid that really needs a lot of work. He's really a projection as an all-around tight end. Now, will his athletic profile and his inability to block turn off a lot of teams from maybe potentially getting him to come in and be kind of that who was the kid he profiles obviously not as athletic, the Ole Miss tight end that went to the Giants. I'm drawing a blank here.
Evan Ingram.
Right, Evan Ingram. He obviously was more of a slot, detached tight end. But even so, it didn't prevent him from getting drafted a little bit early there. Kmet, Kmet's got a lot of growing to do, man. And once again, you're dealing with a kid that had, a breakout year, 40-something catches, not much on tape prior to that. Once again, to me, kind of maybe racked up some catches against some, lesser quality teams, if you will, maybe. Will he fall to the fourth round? I don't know. Do I think round 1 or round 2 is way too high for him? Yeah. But if if he does fall and the Steelers are wanting a tight end in that range, then he's kind of, to me, I would have been probably better served to put Albert O in this place, to be quite honest with you, looking back. As the moment after you push the publish button on this, that mock draft remorse.
Oh, I'm feeling it too.
That you always get. And by the way, I hate doing these damn things, but looking back on it, I would have probably got a lot less pushback as far as just. I think a lot of Steeler fans like him. Like Kmet, they just think there's no way in hell he lasted a third or fourth round. So if you want to consider this maybe a catch-all and say, all right, put Albert O in there, sure, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the camp I'm in, but I will say is that it is so tough to know which way this tight end class is going to break because it's all over the map. I mean, Kmet, I think, could be the first tight end off the board. It could be the fourth tight end off the board. I think the first tight end is probably more likely based on national media projections, but who the heck knows with a class like this? So I don't even know if Alberto would be a fourth-round candidate. So it's really hard to get a gauge on it. I think they'll like Kmet because he is so big and he's one of the kind of the more true inline, type tight ends in this class, and it's kind of hard to find those guys. I mean, he's the only guy that's 6'5", 260 basically. It's like him and Alberto and Colby Parkinson and Trotman, I guess, basically. But even Trotman's a little bit smaller than Kmet. So I think the name fits, but I do think I would be very surprised because we're talking at what is that, pick 130 at that point, and I think with a guy that's being viewed as more likely to be one of the top tight ends off the board, I think that's a bit of a tough sell.
And people say, nobody has him as a fourth-round prospect. Well, PFF does. Not that that means anything, right? But they have a fourth-round projection on him, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So read into that whatever you want. I mean, look, this isn't an exact science. We know that over the years and all like that. Now, here's the thing. People are probably saying, well, damn, Dave, it doesn't sound like you're all up on Cole Kmet. Why the hell do you even have the Steelers draft? Well, I think there's enough there, to work with. I just would not like to see him as a second-round guy,
Yeah.
I mean, if you could get him, okay, look, I mean, maybe people are saying, well, I think you have Duvernay too high. All right, well, swap these guys in the fourth round. All right, maybe you can get Duvernay a little bit later in the fourth, and maybe you have to take Cole Kmet a little bit earlier, or an Albert O a little bit. Where's that fourth round pick at overall?
The first fourth rounder?
The first fourth round one.
I haven't seen a complete draft order. I think it's going to be like whatever Miami's pick is.
Hold on a minute here, and I'll tell you real quick. 114. 114.
Okay. And the second fourth round pick is what number? 130.
125.
Okay. So
maybe, yeah, look, I didn't go back in and say, okay, well, this is a really tail end of the fourth round, kind of thing, because I believe this is the later fourth round pick is the Tennessee pick that they got via the Dolphins there. So, yeah, for him to it would almost take Cole Kmet falling completely out of the fourth round. So is that a bit of a stretch? Okay. Once again, maybe an Albert O fits in better there.
Mm-hmm. All right, sixth round here, you're addressing the edge position with one of your Florida guys.
Yeah, and it's a guy I still got to learn a little bit more about. Jabari Zanigua out of Florida, 6'3". He didn't play on his feet a ton at Florida. The athletic profile, I think, is there. Missed a lot of games in 2000. What's going to hurt his cause, I think, is missing a lot of games in 2019 due to an ankle injury. I think he's a little bit on the small side. It'd be a tough sell to teams wanting to use him as a 4-3 base end. I think he's one of those ideal kind of candidates to be kind of one of those prime conversion guys to a 3-4 outside linebacker. kind of guy there. So, once again, this is more of a projection, a classic tweener who some people are saying, well, there's no way he'll fall to that. The he's not going to fall crowd will say he's not going to fall out of the fourth round. But definitely a projection, developmental guy more than anything else.
Yeah, he had a decent Senior Bowl week, but yeah, I think 6th round makes sense. I mean, with the injuries, I mean, I'm not going to argue too much on where you have him slated. And again, the Steelers like their pass rushers to be big, and so 6'3", 264, with some decent length. Yeah, I think that makes sense, and it really sounds like they are going to draft an edge guy, even assuming they tag Bud Dupree.
Do you see him as a classic tweener?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I can just see him as an outside linebacker, though, for sure. Because, again, you think about Bud Dupree, Watt, Chicolo. I mean, those guys were all 250-something, 260-something coming out. So I think that makes a good deal of sense.
Did he have a full, I'm trying to remember if he had a full profile at the Combine. If he did everything there. Let me look real quick to see at our handy, trusty results tracker. Boy, it sure does look nice seeing that thing all filled in, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. And we have some 10 splits for the defense. We have 10 splits for everybody, so it's all kind of filled in.
Let's see. What did he do on the bench? He had 29 on the bench. That's more than respectable there. 33-inch vertical, 10-foot 7-inch broad jump, 4.64 40, and a 161 get off there in the 10-yard, which is very nice for an edge rusher there when it comes to that number. So
no 3-cone. He didn't do a 3-cone.
No, he's probably going to run his 20-yard shuttle and his 3-cone at his pro day here.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, those are good numbers. You like him more than the other Florida edge guy, Greenard, whatever he's
I think just because of space. I mean, if I could get one of the two there in the 6th round, I'd be fine with it. I think. I think Greenard, just personally, I think he's being touted a little bit too high right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I get that. So I think this guy fits well. And 7th round, you're in lockstep with me here, aren't you?
I mean, what's out there?
Yeah.
What's out there that fits? Not a lot overall when you're looking for, potential pluggers, that maybe can give you still a little bit more as a pass rusher. And
this is Benito Jones.
Benito Jones, yeah, Mississippi, and I think you had him in the 7th round as well too.
Mm-hmm.
By the time this draft rolls around, he might be more of a 6th round guy. I don't know, but man, just for the lack of thinking that the team might want to address the defensive tackle / nose tackle position at some point during this draft, and maybe at 5th round, after the 5th round, there's a handful of names, but he is to me kind of the cream of the crop of the later kind of guys. Obviously battle tested out of the SEC. 10 sacks. What's going to help us cause 10 sacks over the course of the last 3 seasons and 53 total run stops. Certainly is not going to hurt his cause when it comes to potentially falling to the 7th round.
Yeah, I mean, his tape has its moments. He certainly got some high points. There's a lot of low points, though, with Jones. I struggle with this because I think with nose tackle, you kind of put it in 3 camps. You look at the 2nd round at 49 and say maybe you try to slot in a Gallimore there. If not, you look at the 4th round and say, okay, a Hamilton, a Rashad Lawrence, maybe Elliott from Missouri is a guy we should talk about some more. We have talked about him a whole lot. But, what do you sacrifice if you want to do that? Do you have to sacrifice not slotting a receiver or a tight end or a safety or interior offensive line? With 6 picks, it's just so hard to work with. So that kind of creates where someone's got to fall. You can't draft everything as high as you would like. That's why I kind of encourage this team to really look into trading back. Of course, you won't know that until you're on draft day and you kind of see what the lay of the land is. But in our scenarios where you have no Javon Hargrave, you have McCullers and Benito Jones, that's going to make me nervous. I'll openly admit that.
If you're going to trade back anywhere in this draft, it's probably going to be that 2nd round.
Yeah, I mean, what you could do in rough, guesstimating here, you trade 49, go back to about like 63 and pick up something in the 90s. So you could have then, let's say, pick 63, 94, and the comp pick 102, whatever the number's going to be. And that way you kind of have some more picks to play with on day 2.
Right, but trying to predict that stuff is
it's impossible.
Yeah,
And for the team doesn't. I mean, you don't know until you're there and you're
right.
getting offers. You know what the board's going to be. You don't do this thing even a day in advance. So I mean, you don't know. But we both when you do a mock draft, you sit there and say you got only 6 picks. You got a lot of holes to fill. You simply can't plug all the holes with only 6 picks.
Right. I mean, look, I didn't even address potential maybe inside linebacker like I did in that last one. I obviously didn't. To me, and once again, listeners and everybody out there going to have a hard time twisting my arm to get me to mock running back to this team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I understand a lot of people think that the Steelers need one and need one early. Okay, I get it. It's just I'm not there, and I don't think I'm ever going to get there. And look, depending on what happens with Vance McDonald here, again, in the next few weeks here. Yeah, I'm not so sure tight end's a slam dunk, as I've said several times as well too. Now, obviously, I'm more apt to and open to this team drafting a tight end a lot more so than a running back there,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just not there with the running back right now. Where else? Obviously quarterback. I would be absolutely shocked if they went quarterback in this draft, and even inside linebacker, I don't think is a slam dunk.
Yeah, no, I think tight end, again, if it's not there early, then you may just roll with what you have because the day 3 pool is not going to be strong. I'm just kind of looking at some quick research here. Only once in Colbert's history with the Steelers has he had 6 or fewer draft picks, and that was in 2003 when he had 5. The year they traded up for Troy. So for him to do a draft with only 6 draft picks would be very, very rare.
Right, for sure, and obviously not having the first round draft pick this year is a huge anomaly when it comes to the Steelers there. Top to bottom, this is probably as non-sexy of a mock as it comes, right?
Well, I like the Winfield pick. I like the Duvernay pick. So I think it's solid. I think anytime obviously you start with an offensive lineman at 49, it isn't exactly the flashiest thing, but it is really important. This team has prided itself on having really strong interior offensive line depth, and they're going to be gutted here, 2 weeks from now with Foster likely gone.
I lost you. Yeah, what did you say after Foster?
Him, am I back? Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
That's weird. Sorry about that. But yeah, with Foster likely being gone and Finney being, walking obviously, or very likely to walk, this team's going to be gutted on the interior offensive line. So you really have to address that. You can't ignore that position for too long.
And it's not a great deep draft when it comes to interior offensive linemen, in my opinion.
Right. No, it isn't. And it rarely is. So, yeah, you want to do that probably sooner rather than later because once you're getting into day 3, again, just counting on a day 3 pick in general is tough. But, yeah, the names start to dry up.
And look, obviously not having, makes our job with the Blues Clues and all a little bit tougher, not having a first-round draft pick this year. But I think there's some loose kind of rules you can put on this thing. If you're looking at putting a mock draft together and you're looking at drafting senior type players, those guys, especially in the first couple of rounds, better have gone to the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to get a senior type player, maybe after the 4th round, that player better have gone to played in the East-West Shrine game, or at the very least the NFL PA Bowl. If you're going to grab yourself a couple of underclassmen early in this draft, you're probably going to want to stay close to Power 5 schools, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And my other last thought, just kind of thinking here about nose tackle, is that, I know everyone says, and some of it's true, that, they don't run base if it's a sub-package world, and that's where the league has evolved to, but they still run base 30% of the time. And you're sitting in the AFC North with Baltimore and Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram. You're sitting in the AFC North with Cincinnati with Joe Mixon. You're sitting in the AFC North with Cleveland and Nick Chubb. And so you better have a good nose tackle who can stuff the run. So I think my approach to that is, knowing that we both done 7th-round picks, is that you try to find a cheap option in free agency for a nose tackle. I think run defense is a lot cheaper to pay for than a pass rush. And then maybe you draft somebody as well and try to create some competition. So just kind of off the cuff here, that's my quick solution to trying to address the nose tackle position.
And the wide receivers, and I rebumped this post up yesterday on the Twitter machine, was the fact that, look, I mean, they've got a history of liking guys with some college production when it comes to wide receivers, especially in the first kind of 4 rounds, players. I mean, if you're looking at mocking this team a wide receiver, that wide receiver probably should have at least 90 college receptions under his belt.
Yeah, I think Martavis has been one of the only few exceptions. Was Sammy Coates a highly productive guy at Auburn? Do you remember? I can look that up.
He's right there.
Martavis's production wasn't great, right, at Clemson?
Right. Right, the volume, and of course Randall L. was a huge outlier
Sure.
when it comes. But yeah, there's not many that fall below that kind of like that 90. I don't know. You'll have to look at the numbers that I had.
Coates had 82. What did Martavis do in college? Martavis had 61 catches, but they were both big play threats, so they were kind of the exception because they were such vertical threats.
Right, and better be kind of sparky players. In other words, they better be like have a spark score or an estimated spark score, probably at least 110 or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what was Duvernay's spark score? I assume it was above.
It's up there.
It was well above that with a 4.39. So yeah, I think Duvernay's a really solid pick, and I think you're right. I think you're going to hear about his name a lot as we get close to the draft.
Yeah, I think the client. Look, I'm still trying to go through some of these. I haven't gotten it. What's your overall thought on Pittman? He's another one that's a little bit older too. Any like coming close to 23?
Well, he was a senior, so yeah, I imagine he is a little bit older just based off of that. He ran well, running a 4.52 is impressive. I thought the Senior Bowl week was quiet because he got hurt and just really kind of got lost in a crowded group of receivers. The long speed was a question for me, so the 4.52 helped. I know he's kind of gotten some comps to Juju. I don't know. I mean, there's some value there. I probably should study him a little bit more, but I didn't love him in a class where it's easy to find a lot of receivers I love. I didn't come off like feeling about that.
Another one kind of in. Look, I mean, Mims, Jalen Rieger, we've already talked quite a bit about. We think those are Steeler guys. Justin Jefferson, we think is a Steelers kind of guy that might have a chance at the small kid out of Penn State, Hamler. KJ is another one I think could be definitely an option here. Who is the other one? Oh, I started to do a little bit of a deeper dive on Donovan Peoples-Jones out of Michigan. He's one of those younger kind of do everything wide receivers that's going to be that the Steelers I think are really going to like that potentially could be there in that 3rd, 4th round area.
Yeah, he had one of the most insane workouts we've ever seen. I mean, what is he, 6'3", 220, running 4.44, 44 inch vertical. I mean, just 11-something broad. I mean, the question is just, you have to balance that versus the lack of production. And yes, you can blame the quarterback play and Shea Patterson and his struggles. And some of that is fair, but still, whenever you have that kind of athletic profile like Peoples-Jones and your production was so limited, that's a concern. Why did you struggle so much when you were clearly the most athletic guy on the field every single game of your life? And so that's going to be the concern with him.
Any other wide receivers that you throw obviously we talked about Van Jefferson potentially being one of those guys as well. Any other kind of that 3rd, 4th round feel of players that the Steelers would like? Pittman's probably more of where's Pittman at? 2nd, 3rd round kind of guy?
Yeah, it feels like top 75, but you're right. This receiver class is so bloated that some guys are going to get pushed down, I think.
There are going to be some teams come away out of the 3rd or 4th round with a good wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. I would also add a name I mentioned before, James Prochet from SMU, and probably more towards 4th round as opposed to 3rd round. But as a trusty, sure-handed slot receiver, is a guy to look at.
Isn't he a drop issue though? Isn't he a drop issue guy?
I'm not sure. He's got big hands. He's got 9 5/8 inch hands on a relatively small frame. So I think he is a guy that's got a crazy highlight reel of catches. So his hands aren't really a big concern for me.
He might be older than you too. Isn't he almost like 24?
Yeah, I think he's a senior. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he is up there.
All right. So once again, obviously, I think I think I peaked too soon as far as my mock draft. The only problem is I don't think Jefferson out of LSU, potentially last to 49. Be great if he did, but look, once again, because this wide receiver class is so deep, who's going to get pushed down?
Mm-hmm. You're doing the Matthew McConaughey meme there to Justin Jefferson. Be a lot cooler if you did, if you fell to 49.
I don't know. I don't know what that means. What you just said.
All right. Well, hey, all right. I'll do it. It's the youth talking. So
Explain it to me.
It'd be a lot less interesting, entertaining if I tried to explain it. But go look it up. It'd be a lot cooler if you did. It's a movie reference, movie line.
Okay.
Anyway,
all right.
Speaking of players that fit Pittsburgh, well, PFF has their best fit for Pittsburgh, and I always struggle with the pronunciation here, especially with the first name. But they're going with Fresno State guard Netni Mutai, the guard from Fresno State, as the best fit for Pittsburgh at 49.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I get it, but I don't get it. You know. I get it from the explanation that they give. Foster potentially being a cap casualty, and BJ Finney potentially being gone. Mutai obviously I think played. I think he was a left guard. I think there. Last year he started off playing some tackle, and then he went down with the injury there. So
which is a recurring theme for him.
Which is definitely a recurring thing. Boy, he's played 5 games, I think, in total over the course of the last 2 seasons. I think the couple years before that, he also had another injury on top of it there. Extremely strong guy, an extremely play attitude, sort of like Chris Kimoatu from several years ago. Kind of nasty, play through the echo of the whistle. Boy, he'll grind you down to the ground in a heartbeat. However, didn't do anything at the combine. Obviously still trying to recover from, other than lifting, which he did, 44 reps on the bench. But, I mean, is that surprising with you want to talk about a guy that I wonder if he needs a long spoon to feed himself. 31.
These poor short arm guys, Dave. You got no love.
Hey, I have no love. I'm long arm deficient myself. 31 3/4 inch arms. Now he does have, he's got some big hands to help make up for that. 10 5/8 inch hands, but a little bit shorter arms, and really not ideal from measurables when it comes to a Steeler guard standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's that story. Well, first of all, I will say 44 reps is impressive. I don't care what your arm length is. I think that's just a great number.
What,
I mean,
3 or 4 players ever put up that much?
Yeah. So I won't hold that against him, even with the T-Rex thing he's got going on there. But yeah, can he keep his face out of the fan and pass pro? And the injury history is the biggest thing. I mean, how many teams are going to red flag him just off the board because of the medicals? And so, can you make that investment that high into a guy that you don't have a lot of tape on? And do you trust him to be healthy down the line? And so that's going to be the concern with him. So I mean, yeah, I think the maybe a better version of Kimiwatu is a solid comp, but do you trust him to stay healthy? And unfortunately, health has never been kind to him.
Look, I mean, if you could get him a round later, or
if it wasn't your first pick in the draft,
right,
like this is the guy that's going to headline our class,
right? And even a lot of things go against what the Steelers do,
Yeah.
The injury history, the not ideal size. Kind of guy. It just screams that's not going to be the guy.
Yeah. No, I understand why PFF did it. I'm not going to get on him too much here, but
right.
I mean, it's obviously easy to bet against any one player, but I would bet against
non-power 5.
Right. Yeah, just not feeling it.
I'm not either. I mean, I understand why they did it. I'm not going to knock them for trying to connect a few dots there. I would be highly surprised if he's the guy at 49.
Speaking of offensive linemen that people won't like, I have my free agent wish list of offensive linemen that came out the other day on Steelers Depot. I think I had 5. One guy's already been signed, unfortunately, so of course that's my luck. But yeah, it's going to be an unimpressive list. If you thought the safety list was too good that I had, well, that won't be a concern here because I found the dumpster diving offensive linemen. I'll go through them quickly here. The first one, Evan Boehm from Miami. Started 8 games last year and played guard, played center. Also started against Pittsburgh, by the way, so they kind of know him and their kind of scouting report and studying him. Just a cheap, versatile lineman. Play guard, play center. I signed him for a 2-year deal for really cheap money. I don't know if you even. I'll go through the list and I'll get your thoughts after that. Dave, Max Garcia, I think from Arizona is probably the name that fits the best. He didn't play at all last year, stands for 30 special team snaps. He was rehabbing a torn ACL from 2018 with Denver, signed a 1-year deal with Arizona, got activated off PUP midway through. Again, did not log an offensive snap, but was a former 2-year starter at guard. Has played center before, especially at Florida. Steelers had a pro day dinner with him coming out of the draft, so they know him. We know how often this team circles back to guys they like coming out of the draft.
I think that's the guy that you're probably going to be taking the victory lap on right there.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a 1-year minimum prove-it deal. I think it makes a lot of sense. Can play guard, play center. Is he still an athlete? We'll see coming off that injury. I couldn't tell you, but it's worth a look-see. Ode Abuche from Detroit, not going to play center, but more guard, right tackle. Again, versatile, journeyman. I think he's made, 34 career starts, still 29, so under that 30-year-old mark, which is good. John Wetzel's the guy I had on the list that was signed by Atlanta. They had cut him earlier this week and signed him back 48 hours later, so I don't know what they're doing there, but he was a Pittsburgh guy, had started before, played guard and tackle, so he's off the board, though. And the last one, Bradley Sowell from Chicago, who would actually technically become a tight end by Chicago, but really just a big offensive lineman, maybe a 6 offensive line, maybe a tackle to some degree, just a real cheap flyer on that. But I agree. I think Garcia is the name that makes the most sense here.
I'm with you there. And look, people aren't going to like these lists, as a whole. You're not going to get many attaboys because of it, because a lot of people just are not looking at this from a realistic standpoint. We talked at the top of the show yet again of how the challenges of just getting the work done that we think that they want to get done. And boy, even if it's going to be even hard, I don't know, maybe it'll free up a little bit more money if you don't place the tag on Dupree. Obviously, you're not holding up $16 million against the cap there, but even without that, you're going to be pressed. And regardless of what happens with this CBA, it's hard to expect this team being able to do much of anything in free agency,
Right.
So the sights have got to be kept low. They can be raised maybe slightly if you don't tag a guy like Dupree,
But I'm working under the assumption that they will. I think
right,
that's a safe
right.
bet.
But either side of this, you got to lower your sights, and I think you've done a good job of staying within the realistic. I definitely appreciate, these lists. I don't know, and I'm sure several others do.
The party of one over there.
do. But look, and Max Garcia, we've talked about, a few weeks ago when you brought him up there.
Mm-hmm.
You want to connect the dots. That's the one I think you could potentially be taking the victory lap with.
Yeah. And he should be literally a minimum salary benefit player because he didn't play at all last year, essentially. He's rehabbed that ACL. He is 27, 28. I'm not sure exactly how old he is. This is a guy just trying to look for an opportunity, just get into a camp, get some play time. And so I think you have good veteran depth there. Again, this is not saying do not draft a lineman. You need to draft a lineman, even if you sign one of these guys or somebody else. It's a combination of because you want to create competition. Because in Pittsburgh for so long, it's always been that the depth was strong. There was maybe one offensive line spot open, and you had a bunch of young guys battling for it. Now you got a lot of spots open. You don't want to hand these jobs out to anybody. So create competition with veterans, with rookies, versatile guys, with some guy that comes off the radar and makes it interesting. You want to have as much competition as possible, and that's going to raise the bar of the talent and give you the best evaluation and make your team the best version possible ready for week 1.
What's going to happen with Kelvin Beachum?
He's a free agent, right? Is he?
I'm trying to remember if he is or not. It's been a while since I looked.
Yeah, I haven't followed him too much.
Look,
he's a free agent.
Yeah, I think he is going to be a free agent. Let's face it. His big money days are over with.
Yeah, how old is he at this point? 30. He's going to turn 31 in June. Still started 13 games for the Jets last year. I can't imagine he's trying to look for a real reserve job. I think if there's a former Steeler tackle to talk about, it might be Marcus Gilbert in his situation. I'm not saying I would run to the table and sign that, but I've heard his name thrown around a little bit.
Right, and I'm not suggesting. I'm just wondering, as I wonder how bypassed Beachum's going to be on the market.
I know this. I think the tackle group is really poor. Now it's good in the draft, and that may make some teams say we'll just try to draft somebody. But I think that it's going to be elevated because this guy's been a 4-year starter with Jacksonville and the Jets, and the tackle class in free agency is poor. And with a premium on the position, I think someone's going to pay him something.
Yeah, and probably Gilbert, probably more than minimum as well too.
I don't know. How many snaps did he even play last year? I mean, hardly any, right? I started. No, he didn't play any snaps last year, did he? What happened? Well, he got hurt, right? Didn't he tear his ACL?
Yeah.
So I think he could be about a minimum type player. I guess for Pittsburgh, it's just, do you need a tackle, and you certainly need an interior guy more than you need a tackle right now. That's
right.
The way I look at it.
Right.
Right.
I just was going across a page and saw Kelvin Mitchell's name.
Yeah, no,
I wonder if Steve McClendon is going to stick with the Jets too.
He might pop up on one of my lists, Dave, when I do the defensive line. So I've
always been a Steve McClendon fan. And boy, if you could get him back for 1 year on the cheap, boy, that would be the way to go. And I'm not convinced that we'll see with him. I've always been a McClendon fan.
Yeah, no, I think that one would make a lot of sense. And yes, he's older than 30, but we know the exception to that rule is if you're a former Steeler.
Exactly.
You get the exemption. So yeah, that's what I had for free agent offensive line. We'll have receivers next. I have a couple wide receivers cheaply in mind that'll probably go up for Monday sometime next week. Maybe by the next time we do the podcast, we can talk about that list. Anything else, Dave, you wanted to talk about today?
I think we've gone through everything pertinent that's out there, I guess.
Yep. So we can get to some reader emails here to close out the show.
All right, let's start first here with Ben Dykes writes in. Not sure where, let's see, so he sent one in through the site here. Not sure where I send this with to it. And Big Ben coming back, year 2 for Minka with the Steelers and the expected growth of year 2 players like Bush and Johnson. I almost look at this year's draft as gravy. A guy or two that can have situational impact would be great. I would go guard at pick 49 if Finney leaves, or being a Buckeye fan, J.K. Dobbins, Connor, and Snell would wear an opposing defense down, and I think he would get you those 3rd and shorts. Anyway, just some thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it gravy. I mean, I kind of understand the point you're saying, but I still see a lot of holes in this roster to fill, especially assuming that this roster gets constructed the way we think it is, where Foster, Finney, Hargrave, all those guys are out the door. I think you got some big holes with safety depth at interior offensive line. You know my thoughts on the long-term issues with it, with the tight end position. Receiver, do you want to be deeper there? So I still think they're all important drafts. Obviously, there's no draft where it's just not important, but I think it is a really important draft, and especially in a year where they have no money in free agency. I mean, you really got to get the draft right. Yeah,
you can. Yeah, most definitely. And look, I mean, even if it's something that's not, maybe it's not as sexy as what I have there, it still addresses some. Look, I mean, this team going offense would be the first with their whatever you want to call this, the first pick in the draft would be something new, right?
DeCastro was the last one in. So what year was that? 2012?
Were you born?
I was crawling to see DeCastro fall.
All right, Sean Schaefer from Waynesboro writes in, hey guys, first let me say I'm a big fan of Bud Dupree and hope he signs a long-term deal with the Steelers. But if he doesn't, he will probably get the franchise tag. My question is, if he does want too much money, would there be any possibility for a tag and trade scenario with him? And what do you think we could get for him if that were the case? Wow. It takes 2 to tango, first and foremost. It's just not like you can push the trade button and get the deal done. It's always possible, but what could you get in return? I don't think you get a first-round pick in return for him, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the odds are really low. I mean, they're tagging him for a reason. They want to be able to have him be the starting right outside linebacker next year. And you're going to have competition, too, because I know the Ravens are interested in maybe doing something with Matt Judon in a tag and trade situation. I think there's somebody else whose name escapes me that is in talks of a tag and trade, so that may hurt your leverage because there's going to be other pass rushers for teams to look at. I think the odds, though, are still really low. I don't think the Steelers really have any interest in that. Have they ever done that before? I mean, I don't think they've ever done a tag and trade situation.
No, and look, if the way the cap situation is and all like that, if they tag him and get him tagged, it is under the impression that they are going to have him for 2020.
Right.
I don't think they go into this thing thinking, okay, well, let's tag him and see if maybe we could potentially trade him. And obviously, if you did something like that, you would want to have had it done prior to the draft. So you're really setting yourself up for in other words, you're not going to go into this thinking, well, let's tag him because maybe we can trade him. They just unless you had some serious talks at the combine about getting a team or two lined up to potentially do that. I would be really, really, not that it couldn't happen. Would be highly surprised if it did.
I'd be absolutely shocked. Because if you're trading him and you got no one else to replace him, and you're trying to draft another outside linebacker, you're just trying to find the next Bud Dupree, and it just kind of seems a little pointless.
All right, JJ from Lexington, Kentucky writes in, got a good question here. If we get a new CBA in time, the rumors have it will jump the cap to around $230 million. I have a feeling I know where those rumors are coming from. And look, I think people misinterpreted what John Clayton of ESPN said during a radio interview there, because nothing, and I've talked with several guys that have a lot more understanding of the cap than I do in the CBA. Joel Corey being one of those. He pretty much laughed at me through if you can laugh through a DM on Twitter, he did. When I thought, what is this talk about potentially the cap going up to $230 million as part of a new CBA? I think what people are misunderstanding is John Clayton saying $230 million, the cap jumping, is him meaning by 2021. If a CBA gets done, we could see the cap around $230 million. There is nothing out there even remotely, just in my understanding of the CBA and all, that would suggest that this cap would go from a projected $200 million to $230 million. It's just outlandish. So with that, he continues on, JJ, with his thoughts. My first thought was $30 million extra cap room, and then reality set in. I'm guessing minimum salaries will increase also. So my question, do we know how much the minimum salaries will increase and how much, if any, extra cap room we would have? Well, in the minimum is supposed to jump up to $100,000? By
$100,000. Yep.
Right, and then you're going to have, if the 17th, you're going to have other players essentially get a 17th game check, equivalent on top of it there. So and let's say there is a slight increase because of an extra playoff game or two here as part of the new CBA, it's still not going to be enough to jump. It might jump at what, 5-6 million, maybe
for 2020.
Right, for 2020.
Yeah, it'll go up a little bit, but nothing even close to the $20-30 million that's being speculated about.
And then you're going to have to offset the minimum salary increases and any other floor increases on top of it. So
it'll be a wash, basically.
Right. I expect it to be a wash there. So for people out there that thinking this team that the cap's going to jump to $230 million, and boy, what a windfall for the Steelers. I'm not seeing it.
But the biggest impact is that 30% rule goes away, and that's what's going to give you the flexibility you need.
That's the biggest thing about a potential CBA getting done, is that 30% rule going away.
Yeah.
Let's see. He goes on to write, as for Alex, I'm pretty sure Dave assigned you to watch Cool Hand Luke a week ago. I know the combine was last week, but don't forget, you've really got to watch Cool Hand. You'd enjoy it. I think you really would enjoy. It's a classic older movie. Paul Newman. George Kennedy, Paul Newman. You know who Paul Newman is?
Do I?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely don't know who George Kennedy is.
Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord, I'm sure you've seen something in the past with a couple of those guys. Boy, there's several big names ended up being in this movie as well, too. Man, you got to watch Cool Hand Luke. What a great story.
Let's see, he was in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Never seen that. Hustler. Never seen that. Seen Slapshot? Wait.
You've seen
Yeah,
Slapshot
yeah,
at
I've seen
least.
Slapshot. Yeah.
Okay.
I got you there.
Yeah, put Cool Hand Luke on. You won't be sorry you watched that movie. You
Is
really
it in
won't.
color?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
there sound?
Yeah.
You can tell me to
Anyway.
watch the Train movie. The first. Anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying.
Anyway, great to hear from you, JJ, in Lexington, Kentucky. Let's see here. Let's go down to Nick writes in, hey, Dave, just curious, how do you watch Penguins games out of market? I'd love to do the same. I've got an NHL TV subscription, and I can broadcast it to one of the 23 TVs I have in this house. They're I highly suggest if you want. And look, I don't watch because of having to write and research and watch tape and all. I don't get to. I watched the game last night though. I did get to watch. Did you watch the game last night against Buffalo?
I didn't, but I knew that they won, so they're finally getting back. They're finally breaking that big losing streak.
Joshua Dicker writes it, Dave, regardless of how the Steelers do business as far as franchise tag and long-term deals, how does the money work out? This is another good question. How does the money work out if a player signs a franchise tag and a little later in the same year is able to work out long-term deal with the team? For example, if the Steelers tag Bud Dupree and he signs a tag, then if they are able to do a long-term deal with him the same year, does the entire franchise tag still apply to this year's captured as well as their first year of the new deal? How does that work? Okay, Joshua, look, if you get the guy, if you issue the guy the franchise tag and then he runs upstairs and immediately signs what is essentially a 1-year contract. If they work out an extension with him, basically that 1-year deal gets torn up. Okay, and then you're replacing it with a long-term deal, and obviously, assuming the 30% rule goes away, and depending on how the deal is structured, you're obviously hoping that the initial cap amount, which equals the tag amount, would lower to some degree, and especially the 30% rule goes away. Now, remember here, when you place a franchise tag on a player under the rules of the current CBA, you have until 16th or 17th of July to get said player signed to a long-term deal. All right? So, let's say you get Dupree, place a franchise tag on him. The clock's ticking to get him signed to a new deal by the middle of July. If you don't, then he has to play underneath the franchise tag that year. So you've got a time element involved there. So, yeah, you can franchise tag him. You can sign him to a long-term deal. What happens at that point then is essentially that franchise tag, that 1-year tender is torn up, and then you're working off of the new deal premises and the parameters and the layout of that said new deal.
Okay, good deal. Thanks for the answer there. I trust you with all the cap stuff, and I think that was a really good explanation.
All right, let's go to George Corey writes in. Love the show. Greatest podcast by far. Thank you. Greatest Steelers podcast by far. Thanks for that, George. Looking at our cap space or lack thereof, who do you think we are really overpaying? I understand the obvious discussed cap casualties, but if push came to shove, what big names do you feel could be replaced cheaper? George from Kidderminster, United Kingdom.
What's he asking? He's saying what?
Who are the guys, not the upcoming potential salary cap casualty guys, the guys like Ramon Foster, the guys like Anthony Chickalo, I guess the guys like Mark Barron. Who are the guys that are overpaid right now for 2020 that could, I guess, potentially be jettisoned out the door? I'll tell you, one has not been Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I think it's just the names that are on the cap casualty list. That's why they're cap casualty.
Stephon Tuitt's schedule. And look, when you look at these guys, people will look at their cap number and say, oh, man, there's no way he's worth the cap number. Remember, a lot of these guys have no say really what their cap number is because of restructures and stuff like that. You have to look at what you're paying these guys. Obviously not Roethlisberger because of, you have to look at roster bonuses and any guys that have roster bonuses and base salaries together. Okay, so whereas Ben Roethlisberger, you're paying him essentially what, 21 million this year overall when you look at his base salary. Now, obviously, the prorated plays into that for a fact, especially with a franchise quarterback. But is Ben Roethlisberger overpaid? No.
No. Well, some people will argue otherwise, but I'll say no.
Stephon Tuitt, $9 million this season. Whether you like it or not, you're not cutting or trading Stephon Tuitt because you're going to go backwards in dead money and cap charge regardless when it comes to him. Yeah, he's had some injury issues, whatever. It's just not a guy that's up for discussion. David DeCastro is not up for discussion schedule. I mean, $8.75 million is what that guy is scheduled to earn as a base salary in 2020. That is a bargain beyond bargains, if you ask me.
Yeah, where's he ranked among the top paid guards? He can't be up too high, can he?
The line's constantly moving.
Right. I'm just curious where he's at. I mean, I don't know, is he top 5, top 10? He's cheap. Again, he's a bargain. I mean, absolutely, based on the play he's giving you.
Just offensive linemen in general. Let's see, DeCastro.
Well, I mean, tackles. I don't know, tackles always get paid so much. It's hard to compare, I think.
All right, so you want to just know what guards or in
yeah, or I guess interior offensive line over the cap. I wish they would just have guards. They break it down into left guard, center, right guard. It can be a little annoying.
Just on his average alone, let's see here. Technically he's a 10 million a year average guy. Okay, based on his APY and all like that, and that's still even when it comes to right guards, he is 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th overall.
And I'll take that. Yeah, I mean, tied for 6th with Yonda, behind Brooks, Martin, Zeitler, Turner, Gabe Jackson. Yeah, I mean, that's great money. For
Cameron Hayward's not up for discussion. Joe Hayden is scheduled to essentially earn $7 million in both base salary and roster bonus in 2020. I mean, that's not up for, I guess some people are going to say Marquise Pouncey probably would be a guy that some would probably claim is overpaid. He's scheduled to earn a total of $8 million in base salary and roster bonus in 2020. I mean, who are you going to replace him with? I mean,
Yeah, I don't think there's really any clear name. I think it's just the cap casualties that we've mentioned.
Right. So, I don't view anybody that's potentially, and that goes for really, I think, Vance McDonald as well too. A lot of people ain't gonna like to hear it, but even assuming he makes it past March 18th here, I don't think there's anybody on the Steelers roster that will be left over on March 18th that is overpaid.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Good question there, George. Let's see here. If I can find one more here, maybe. Getting on down here. I think we've gone through, let's see. Taylor Carpenter writes in, David Knox, I'll keep this brief. What are the 2 positions the Steelers are most likely to double dip in the upcoming draft and why?
Well, it's kind of a catch-all, but offensive line, just to try to improve depth as much as possible. I know obviously it could be a tackle or guard or whatever, so maybe that counts, maybe it doesn't. But I think you want to just try to build up your offensive line depth as much as possible, and like I said, create competition there.
Yeah, I would think, and that's just a generic, because we don't think they're going to draft two guards
Sure.
And even then, I think you would agree the remote possibility of 2 offensive linemen being drafted this year that would be the position most likely, I guess. But I'm not expecting it to happen, and I don't think you are either.
Right, with 6 picks, it's tough.
Let's see. Joe Clemens writes in, player profile suggestion, Wisconsin wide receiver Quintez Cephas. I'm sure you get a ton of these, but I want to pass along a name I'd love to get your analysis on. Quintez Cephas out of Wisconsin. He ran a 4.7 in the 40, but jumped well and threw up 23 reps on the bench. I watched some highlights, not game film, just highlights, and this kid just screams Steelers wide receiver to me. He's been called the most undervalued or underrated wide receiver in the draft by some. According to Jeff Okuda and Damon Arnett, he was the toughest player to cover. Huge praise. Looks like a perfect day 3 pick to me if someone doesn't swoop in before us. Hope to read or hear your thoughts about him soon. Thanks for the best of what you do. I haven't even looked at him.
Yeah, he's a physical blocker type. Yeah, ran 4.72, I think was the official 40, which is obviously really tough. But yeah, I saw some of that praise too, and I'm betting we'll do a profile on him at some point. I don't know when that'll be, but I'm betting we will do it before the draft.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about him, so I think I've seen a highlight clip on him, and that's it. So that's not very good for me to go off of right there. Buddy Danielle Russell from Brisbane, Australia, throw another shrimp on a bobby for us. Dan, good day, Dave and Alex. I was thinking about Antonio Brown and his prospects of making the Hall of Fame. If he never plays another snap in the NFL, do you think that he has done enough to be a lock for the Hall of Fame? I know off-the-field behavior isn't meant to influence his chances, but do you think there's a chance he misses out because of his conduct?
I think on the field, and I said this when he was a Steeler, he's a slam dunk first ballot Hall of Famer. I think the very interesting question is just how does the off the field stuff, taint that image of AB. And I know it's not probably supposed to technically change the opinion of the voters, but you know that it's going to, because now when you think of AB, you don't think about how great of a player he was. You think about how crazy of a guy he's been. So that's a good question. I don't know. I know from an on-field perspective, he's more than worthy of being inducted into Canton. But I just wonder, I think, we'll see how his story ends. I mean, does he get back in the league and does things calm down? And if that happens, then I think he's got an easy track to Canton at some point. If he never gets back on a football field, if the crazy stuff keeps happening, then that may really derail his chances. So I think we'll have to kind of see how his football career ends over the next 3 to 5 years before really being able to give a good answer on that.
And boy, something of them getting in the minds of some of these voters, man.
Yeah,
especially what we had, went through just, this time around alone. They say one thing and they do another, I think, a lot of times. And I'll tell you this, Dan. If I was a voter, look, I hate the way all this has transpired. But let me tell you, there was a period of six seasons, Alex? 7, where, man, you just running out of superlatives just as a football fan to describe what that guy did on the field week in and week out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, on the field, there should be no debate. It's all about how do you balance that with the off-the-field stuff.
And I know the whole longevity thing, yeah, blah, 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 but was he the best wide receiver in the game during the prime year, his prime years, which abruptly, of course, came to an end, last off, 2018 season, there. Man, he was arguably the best wide receiver, and just not for 1 year. I mean, multiple years. How bad has he acted off the field? It hasn't been great, obviously.
That's another statement.
But how much? If I were a voter, it'd be hard to vote against him.
It would, but again, I think it all depends on how the next 3 years go for him from an NFL standpoint. That could really change and write his story.
I mean, look at that guy we talked about from Dallas, the multi all-pro guy that really is the only guy with 6 or more all-pros that
Drew Pearson?
No, the offensive lineman, the guy that ended up murder-suicide guy. I mean, everything on paper screams that guy should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but because of the way his post-NFL career went, obviously tragic murder-suicide kind of thing, I'm willing to bet that's what's kept him out.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I know you're not saying this. I don't want to equate what AB's done to that, but point taken.
Right. I'm not dare trying to compare the two.
Sure.
But look, I know it's hard to draw a line and say, and recency bias, of course, playing in with him. But man, how long before we see another wide receiver like him? His kind of production and all.
Understood.
We'll
see.
Running out of superlatives there. All right. I think we got most of it there, Alex. Anything to any breaking news on the way out the door here?
The Auburn's Pro Day is going on today. I'm trying to see if Pittsburgh's there. Have not seen them yet, but I'm betting that they are. We have, I think, about 100 draft profiles done already, so congrats to the team for that. And Scott Pavelli has a mock draft up on the website sticking to the top for you guys to check out.
And maybe we'll review that if no more come down during the Tuesday podcast. So that's when we'll be back, right? Tuesday?
Yep, back on Tuesday.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, here we are in the off season. You want to donate to the cause, even if you want to set up something. I know we got a lot of people, and thank you for those that do that set up kind of like a monthly donation of a couple, $3 to $5 a month via PayPal. Makes it easier on them. You want to go any donation route there, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button up right navigational bar, and that'll take you to PayPal where you can safely and securely donate to the Terrible Podcast there. Also, if you want an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, and you can help us that way too. For $25 for one calendar year there, you can have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com that's been quite popular since we put that into effect well over a year ago as well. Alex and I certainly do appreciate all the support everybody have given us up until now, and hopefully we're continuing to put out good quality podcasts for you as well. And in the meantime, we will be back. Alex, keep washing your hands, brother. All right.
You too.
All right.
We don't go outside. So
yeah, that helps. That helps quite a bit. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast. Oh, watch that Cool Hand Luke in the near future.
All right.
As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.